Welcome all, folks. Well, folks, let me ask you this question. Are our New York Mets on a budget? Are we on a budget? That'll be a question that we will answer throughout this video. But more importantly, Roki Sasaki met with our New York Mets yesterday. What came about from that meeting? What does Roki Sasaki hold near and dear to his heart, and what is he looking for from these MLB teams? And lastly, I see an effect that is a lingering effect from last year, and I'm going to call that the Boris Core 4 effect. And we're seeing that effect, you could say fortunately or unfortunately, our New York Mets, specifically Mr. Pete Alonso. So let's go over that as well. As always, I'd like to thank you. I hope you are having a great holiday season, enjoying yourselves. Welcome to our Hot Stove series, episode 4. Let's get this started off right. Smash that like button if you are brand new MLB or Mets fan. Subscribe, join us. We are celebrating 2 years as a channel in about a week. We're almost up to 3,000 subscribers, so I thank you for sticking with us and for growing with us as well. And as we grow, it'll be a fun journey. And again, keep those comments coming. I enjoy reading the comments. Some of them are very, very entertaining, and I learn a lot from you. Okay, so first, the Roki Sasaki meeting happened with the New York Mets yesterday. Okay, I've always said this from past meetings, Yamamoto, Juan Soto. I always wanted our New York Mets to go to meet with the said player, any player, third, fourth, fifth. I never wanted to be the first team to meet. Never wanted to be the first team. Very often, the first team is always a team that the player isn't very interested with. I mean, last year, Yamamoto met with the Mets first. But you know what? Yamamoto did seem to have certain interest in going with the Mets. It's just that LA was his ultimate destination. Juan Soto this year, he met with the Blue Jays. He met with the Red Sox first. He met with the Mets third. So that's not always the end all be all. One of the reasons why I don't like to go first is also because you could learn from the first meeting what comes out from it. Now, the good thing about the Roki Sasaki sweepstakes is that there are supposedly levels. Round 1, round 2, round 3. Now, I know there are other levels elsewhere, but if the Mets make it to the second and third round, which I suppose that they will, that it really doesn't matter who met first. So that'll be the good thing. So that being said, what did we learn from the meeting? What happened? So let's get into that right now. All right, so facts. Let's get to facts. First off, the Mets already coming off of winning the Juan Soto sweepstakes. We already won one of the major sweepstakes in MLB history. The Mets came out victorious. We all know that. Okay, so the facts of the matter. So the Mets had their meeting in Los Angeles yesterday. Yesterday, the New York Post confirmed. They also confirmed that the Yankees have also been granted an in-person visit with Mr. Sasaki. Cashman acknowledged this on Wednesday, and they soon plan to visit the 23-year-old as confirmed by agent Josh Wolf. So far, the Mets and the Yankees are the only clubs whose meetings have been public thus far. Every other team has been invited to submit a virtual presentation, and Sasaki will host get-togethers with clubs that progress to the second round. So if the Mets, Yankees get to the second round, they will have virtual presentations with Mr. Sasaki. So in my opinion, it looks like this is going to go at least 3 rounds. At least. Wow, that's interesting. Very, very, very interesting. So they have been trying to keep the Mets meeting very, very quiet. Very, very quiet. But there have been very important nuggets that have come out of the meeting. And we're going to get to that very, very shortly. but let's just go over more of the dynamics that we know about. Okay, so there is enormous interest among all 30 clubs. As we know, everybody can participate in this signing. Mets president of operations David Stearns traveled to Japan already. Traveled to Japan to watch Sasaki pitch in September. Quote from Stearns, he says, "We are going to give it our best shot. We are going to give it our best shot." It's very difficult in these processes to truly understand what a player's preference is. This isn't a normal free agent recruitment process. And it's for the first time since Shohei Ohtani made his way to MLB years ago in 2018. There is a hyped international free agent for MLB that can only be won through coaxing and not by contract. Folks, very important. He can only be paid what is in the bonus pool money for that respective team because he is not 25. Sasaki is being handled as an amateur international free agent who is restricted to a team's international bonus pool, as mentioned. He is a potential ace, a potential ace. And if you didn't get to go see my scouting report video, I go over every single thing this kid has to offer you. He is a rare, unique specimen. Please go check it out. Okay, so Steve Cohen doesn't have his normal Superman-like ability to throw out that mega contract, at least initially. At least initially. But in New York, we have the ability to pair him with Kodai Senga, and that is very important. Maybe, just maybe, Sasaki has heard the positive reviews from pitchers who have worked with the Mets pitching infrastructure led by Mr. Jeremy Hefner. Mr. Jeremy Hefner, in fact, the agent of Sasaki has hailed Jeremy Hefner and has communicated that to Sasaki. And actually, that has been known as one of the biggest highlights of the Mets, Jeremy Hefner and the pitching lab. Jeremy Hefner and the pitching lab. Also, how much does the recent signing of the best free agent on the market, Juan Soto, going to the Mets, influence Sasaki? Does that have an impact? Because, folks, I believe it does. You know, you look at the impacts of the past. Ohtani going to the Dodgers. Yamamoto follows. And we've seen more examples in history come from the NBA. LeBron, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade go to the Heat. The Nets situation, Kyrie Irving following Kevin Durant. So we've seen it many times where superstars will link up with each other. In this situation, you have Sasaki already with an established Japanese player, and he tells you, he's going to tell you how important that is. Okay, so what are the things that we learned from the meeting and what Sasaki is looking for? And he highlighted two major things. Number one, he is looking for a team's overall success / track record. Overall, like, is it a winning team? Is it a team that can win in the future? So how successful is the team? How successful is the team, right? Okay, so that's number one. Number two, and this is very important, he is looking for their past track record with Japanese players and the history of developing pitchers. Okay, so history of developing pitchers. The Mets have shown in recent history how successful they've been. And when you talk about history of developing pitchers, who cares how a team developed pitchers 20 years ago? What have you done for me lately? And the Mets have been extremely successful at developing and taking pitchers to that said next level. Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Luis Severino, Phil Maton, and the list really goes on and on. Tyler McGill had some of his best starts. Jose Quintana had some of his best starts at the end of the year. So, what the Mets have been able to do with pitchers and, kind of mediocre pitchers has been off the wall. Imagine how they can take a guy with Sasaki, his specific talent level, and translate that to the MLB. And here's another important part. Wolf also suggested that Sasaki has had negative experience with the Japanese media, and he might prefer a smaller market. So, that automatically we would say LA out, New York out. In my opinion, what it does do is it says Los Angeles Dodgers, you're out. New York Yankees, you're out. But here's the deal with the New York Mets. New York Yankees winning tradition has always been World Series or bust. Throughout their whole culture, they've been very buttoned up corporate. The New York Mets have shown with the Juan Soto signing, we will do whatever we can to cater to the player. I believe the culture and not being, let's so-called big brother for the last 100 years is a benefit in this situation. You're the team with less expectation. You're the team that if you win or carry them to the promised land, your legacy will be that much greater. And by him seeing how, track record with Japanese players tells me that he cares about legacy. Oh, he cares about overall success of the team. Legacy is an important factor in this kid's decision making, and going to a team that already has Ohtani doesn't really, won't really help your legacy that much because you will be on a team that is expected to win no matter what. No matter what. I mean, you're going to be on a super team. Also, we've also heard in the past how endorsements are important to the kid because he's not going to be making money up front. Going to a place like New York, going to a place that is cultivated and really being developed by Steve Cohen to be a place that is, an entertainment capital. I mean, I don't think, you're going to find a situation in MLB that is going to be more conducive than you being the face of the New York Mets. You're not going to be the face of the New York Yankees. You have Aaron Judge there, at least for the next 4 or 5 years. You're not going to be the face of the LA Dodgers. But you know what? You and Juan Soto have a chance to be the face of the New York Mets. So that is really, going to be a very interesting situation. And then also, the Japanese pitcher situation, being able to pitch next to a guy like Kodai Senga, I think is going to be great in so many respects. Kodai Senga is a very respectful but talented guy who will let this kid shine. He's never gonna be able to outshine Mr. Ohtani. No matter what he does, Ohtani hits like Babe Ruth, pitches like Cy Young. So, he has a situation where he can be that lead guy in Queens. He could be that lead guy. He can take advantage of endorsements. He could be in a smaller situation than the New York Yankees, but still reap the benefits of the big city, the big endorsements. I think the New York Mets fit what he's looking for in so many different ways. And then also having a guy like Steve Cohen who will basically cater to the guy's needs. Now, if you saw what the Yankees did the other day to Max Fried, at the Max Fried press conference, basically Max Fried family was sitting in the front row. Max Fried was at the podium. So Cashman comes out. And I believe Aaron Boone was next to him. They come out with flowers. Cashman has flowers. Boone has flowers. They go to the front row and they present those flowers to the family of Max Fried. Now, everybody's saying they're doing that. They've never done that before. They've never done that, at least not that I can remember, or they haven't done it in recent history. But they've done it as a response because so-called they haven't been family friendly. And, why did they get that moniker? Because of the Mets situation with Juan Soto and the Mets beating them out. So in my opinion, my situation, I laugh at that. I'm like, wow, that's funny. You see the Mets making the Yankees literally dance, like literally jump through hoops, and then other people say, oh, the Yankees are trolling the Mets. No, I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to treat the family of the players good. Give them flowers, whatever you have to do to make them feel comfortable. I mean, the Mets went above and beyond. I mean, they literally gave the mother of Juan Soto a stipend, a budget to get clothes. They gave the family a suite, $1 million suite. I mean, they went above and beyond to make sure him and his family members were accommodated. And in these high stakes games, when you are in it for that mega free agent, that's what you got to do, folks. That's what you got to do. Now, it's been very clear right off the bat that the Mets have a philosophy, that the Mets have a game plan. Right off the bat, we know it. And what does this have to do with the budget? Are the Mets operating under a budget? Well, let's talk about the quick game plan. game plan right away is we see the Mets freely being able to target these offensive, rare offensive talents like Juan Soto, like a potential Vladimir Guerrero, these guys who play every day, non-pitchers. We will target them as long as they are in, fairly young, mid-20s. Usually is that's very young for a free agent. We're going to target those guys to give big mega contracts to, just like the Dodgers did. Now the Mets are going to kind of replicate that contract, that model. Now the Mets on the flip side, they're not giving these long contracts to the guys already in their 30s. Max Fried, 8 years, $220 million. That is not the Mets philosophy. They would rather seek to find value in those pitchers, those players. Griffin Canning was a recent signing. And, I had a live stream on that video the other day, and oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, the comments that I got are off the wall, off the wall. God bless everybody. God bless everybody. But I mean, I said the guy was at best a spot starter, depth piece, and I said he's an eighth or ninth potential man in your rotation. I don't know if people understand that means that he's not making the rotation, but the quotes that I got that I believe he's going to pitch 170 innings and that he's going to have a major role. No, if this guy has a major role on the 2025 team, we are in deep trouble. The guy is going to be a spot starter if needed, and I foresee him coming out of the bullpen at one point. If you go through all the pitchers that we went through last year, we went through a whole crap load of pitchers that potentially came out of the bullpen. I think if he's not making spot starts, you can get him out of the bullpen. I think what the big thing the Mets have to do is this kid has the most hittable fastball in baseball. He's got a decent changeup. If they can get some movement on his fastball, then he has a little more potential, but that's all it is. It's a shot in the dark right now with that guy, Griffin Canning, a value contract. But I definitely don't foresee him being a pivotal piece, and certainly not a major piece of the rotation. I don't even want him as a fifth starter. Some people are advocating, if he's a fifth starter, that's not that bad. No, I'm looking at rotations like the Dodgers, and your fifth starter is not going to be a significant piece in the playoffs. And that's what it's all about. It's all about winning and building yourself up to be that World Series champion. And, he's not even going to be a pivotal part of that. We'll just need him to eat up some innings during the regular season. That's it. Okay, so Mets operating under a budget. So this is what I'm going to suppose this right now. I'm going to take what the Mets have always said. The Mets are operating under a budget, right? We don't know what it is, but they are certainly operating under a budget. But I'll tell you this, the Mets always have the ability to blow that budget because, as Steve Cohen says, the Mets will always remain opportunistic. So the Mets they're about 250 to 255. So I'm thinking that Stearns, his budget for this team is around 300 million. Around 300 million. That's what I'm going to project right now. The Steve Cohen tax, I believe, is above $301 million. That's when you pay, start doubling the tax penalties and stuff like that. So I believe the Mets are trying to stay within 300 million. Doesn't mean that they can't go above it. They're going to remain opportunistic, but I believe that's that David Stearns always does. Always sets a budget. Always. You can't just have an open door. You have to set a budget, and if you have to need to go past it, then you evaluate if the player is worth it. Is the player worth, once you go over 300 million, are they worth paying double the contract value? I think that's why I think they're trying to get value contracts now, and they know they still have to get a first baseman. They still have to get potentially 2 frontline pitchers. They still have to get a couple key guys in the bullpen. It would be nice for them to sign a DH, a Jock Peterson. So there's still a many moves. So getting a guy like right now, Griffin Canning, it's just a guy who can eat up a certain amount of innings. So, what is going on right now? Are the Mets seriously interested in a guy like Alex Bregman? And I'm going to repeat what I've been repeating. I'm going to repeat what I've been repeating. Alex Bregman, in my opinion, is just a way to get leverage. Leverage. They are not, and I'd be shocked if they get Alex Bregman and they kind of blow past my theory. Then they care about defense way more. But I don't think what he provides as a 31-year-old defensively, is that much more vastly superior to Mark Vientos. And then you got to figure out how much better Mark Vientos can get defensively. And then as Bregman declines, his defensive capabilities are probably going to decline as well. So there's just so many negatives to the Bregman. But again, it's all about creating leverage in the Pete Alonso negotiations. Okay, Pete, you don't want to negotiate? You don't want to work with us? We're going to pivot to Alex Bregman. And we know your market is bare. There are not many teams interested in Pete. Nobody's kicking the tires on Pete Alonso. Well, that may change in the future. Maybe if teams strike out on their particular players, if the team that's desiring to get Christian Walker signs with other, elsewhere, maybe they'll kick the tires on Pete. Maybe that's what Scott Boras is waiting for. But is Scott Boras potentially going down the same road that he went down last year with the core four, Jordan Montgomery, Blake Snell, Matt Chapman, where they waited till the end of free agency, and then all those guys had to basically virtually settle on value contracts based on what Boras told them they could get. Now, as time goes on, is Pete Alonso value going to go up or is it going to go down? I mean, I've always said you have to sign when the money is there. Pete Alonso had that contract 6 or 7 years, $160 million. I don't think his market is, honestly, folks, his market, that seems like it's pie in the sky now, folks. It seems like it's pie in the sky. I mean, they are trying to get still around 7-8 years, $200 million. That's why you don't even have a team interested. Not even a team. Forget about 2 or 3 teams mulling it over. You don't have a team interested. The Mets seem to be interested at about 4 years at about 115 to 120 million based on a couple recent reports. And then you have Scott Boras all the way at 200 million. Now, is he going to take this into March, into potentially, hopefully not the beginning of the season, but my thing is that is a huge detriment to a guy like Pete Alonso. He could sign that 1-year prove-it contract, but at the end of the day, that's also very risky because if he signs that prove-it contract and somehow he gets hurt or somehow he has a second year that is less than productive or it goes down, now you're a year older. Now you have 2 years of lesser production, and that 4-year, $120 million contract is going to shrivel up into a 3-year, $60 million contract, or even less than $20 million a year. So, Pete and Scott Boras right now, they are playing with fire. I highly recommend Pete taking that 4-year deal at 22, 23 million a pop because for an age 30-year-old first baseman who's not in the best condition, I would take it. I would run. If you want more money, invest it. Talk to Mr. Steve Cohen. But, that seems like it's top of the line. And then you got to remember, being here as a lifetime Met, I don't think there's anywhere Pete Alonso is going to go and be as happy as he will be as a New York Met. Nowhere. Okay, now let's get to the last point. Why are the Mets being so, we'll use this word, non-aggressive? People right now, I say, are 2 words, either saying be patient or panicking. Why are the Mets not being aggressive? Well, we'll go back to what David Stern's philosophy has always been. His philosophy has always been patience. Always, always, no matter what the situation is. He feels that if you make a move under pressure or you make a move, as a reaction, you're going to make a mistake. Case in point, that Max Fried contract, maybe it'll be a good 2-3 years, but I mean, that has a potential to have a 4 or 5 year bust window. And then, Cody Bellinger, I mean, that has a potential bust window on it too as well. I mean, if He's got 2 years, $53 million left on that contract or around there. I mean, and in Devin Williams, the guy you got for 1 year, even if he has a lights out year, you could have him for 1 year and then lose him. Or next year you have to pay him like Edwin Diaz, $20 million a pop. So, those were the Yankees' aggressive moves. The Mets have taken a different tack. But again, they got Juan Soto. I mean, they got Juan Soto, which puts them so much ahead of the pack. I mean, and I said this the other day, which this got misconstrued as well. I said, even if you suppose that the Mets won 89 games last year, and you basically subtract the guys that we lost or don't have right now, that Pete Alonso, Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, and you subtract their WAR from 89 wins, and then you add Juan Soto, 8 wins above replacement, and then Kodai Senga, let's say he has 3 or 4 wins, I'd say, based on subtracting and addition, that would bring us to around 90 wins. Doesn't mean we're a 90-win team, but just based on those simple mathematics, we'd be at a 90-win team right now. Plus, we have a bunch of moves we still need to make. So we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. Right now, we are working with the market. Luis Castillo. Oh my God. In fact, you know what? Let me share something funny with you. You can always kind of tell who writes a story, right? Who writes a story. So I was reading, doing my research, and they were saying, oh, which potential pitcher could the Mets get? And Pablo Lopez came up on the radar, right? So ESPN, Jeff Passan reported the Twins are getting calls from teams regarding Lopez's availability. If Minnesota was interested in dealing him, what could it take from the Mets to get the right-hander? So let me just show you. Pablo Lopez has been, an okay pitcher. Like last year, he was 15-10 with a 4.08 ERA. He's going to be 29 years old next year, and he has a career lifetime 3.91 ERA, right? So I mean, like, he's easy. To me, he's a kind of a middle of the road. He'll be like a 3 or 4 pitcher, right? So for a 3 or 4 pitcher, what would you suppose the trade package would be? So when I was reading this proposed trade, I was quite honestly blown away. So according to Sporting News, Jackson Roberts, they proposed this trade to the New York Mets. They said Mets would receive Pablo Lopez, and the Twins in exchange would receive outfielder Ryan Clifford, right-handed pitcher Nolan McLean, and third baseman Brett Beatty for Pablo Lopez. And honestly, I was kind of floored. Now, to be fair, I'll tell you, he's signed to a 4-year contract, and it's 25, 26, and 27. So he's got 3 years left, and he's making about 21 million a year, which isn't insane, but you're giving up your number 4 prospect, your number 9 prospect, and you're giving up a former top 20 prospect in all of baseball and Brett Beatty. So you are giving potential. You are giving up I mean, honestly, for a guy like Pablo Lopez, I literally hang up the phone in a second. But that tells you right now, that is obviously somebody who is biased more towards the Twins. Obviously. But this isn't a situation where you don't want to find yourself. And being less aggressive and more patient when let's say the market conditions were that Pablo Lopez was the only pitcher available. If he was the only pitcher available on the market, I'd say, okay, you might have to give up a crazy package to get him. But fortunately, Luis Castillo's on the market. Dylan Cease appears to be on the market. There appears to be a couple Pittsburgh Pirate pitchers on the market. There appears to be a bunch of pitchers all over baseball, kind of littered on the market, not to mention all the free agents, Corbin Burns, Walker Buehler. So there are a bunch of pitchers available. So that's why a price like that for Pablo Lopez is insane. Luzardo from the Marlins. So there are a slew of options still available. Now, another thing I'd like to share with you is I heard about a Luis Castillo proposed trade, and that proposed trade is they had one with the Red Sox, and I believe the Mariners, they were looking for, I forgot the guy's name, Tristan Casas, one of their top prospects that graduated to the MLB level. So that's who the Mariners were looking for. Or from the Mets, they wanted us to build a package around Mark Vientos. So right off the bat, if that was the case, I obviously we don't do that. We don't do that. No way. This is a guy who literally, if you look, I was looking at Mark's numbers the other day in the playoffs, and to get a guy at such a young age that could perform at that high a level, he hit 3 home runs and he had 7 RBIs, I believe, against the Dodgers. Let me bring up his playoff numbers. I mean, his playoff numbers, I gotta say, super clutch for the kid. Postseason numbers in his first postseason, he batted 327, 18 hits, 5 home runs, 14 RBIs. On base of 362, he slugged 636, OPS of almost 1,000. I mean, a guy like that who can play in New York in his first, I won't even say full season. Last year, Mark Vientos only had what do you at? 454 plate appearances. So literally, this kid is the sky's the limit. If he has 600 at bats or 600, if he had close to 700 at bats like Pete, this kid's hitting over 40 home runs. So I mean that kid I think is going to be on another level. I'd build the package around Brett Beatty, Drew Gilbert, talk from there. So, folks, what do you think? These are my updates and my Roki Sasaki updates as well. Thank you all so much. I hope you are enjoying your holidays. Stay tuned, like, and subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and have yourself a great day. Thank you again.